Let's draw this back now to the principal question we're trying to answer in this series. When was Jesus born? We know from the Gospel of Matthew that Jesus was born during the lifetime of Herod the Great, with the latest possible date of death for Herod somewhere in around February AD 1. We can definitely say absolutely Jesus is born before that time. However, keep in mind, during the final days of Herod's lifetime, there's a lot of travel. We also have recorded in Matthew the visit of the wise men, the Magi. They had to go meet Herod. He had to go in a state to receive them. Then they go to find Jesus. Then they don't come back. Herod realizes they haven't come back and orders his soldiers to go massacre the infants in Bethlehem. All of this would take some time. If you pair up what we're told in Matthew with what we're told in Luke, it appears that an absolute minimum, Jesus is 6 weeks old before his family flees to Egypt. What that means is if the absolute latest possible date of Herod's death is sometime in February of AD 1, go back 6 weeks. The absolute latest, probably a little bit earlier, but the absolute latest possible date of Jesus' birth would be the end of 1 BC. That gives us a datum we can now use in our chronology. Jesus is not born after the beginning of AD 1. December of 1 BC will be the latest possible date we can consider in our chronology. Now wait a minute. Shouldn't we extend that line back maybe 2 years? Doesn't the Gospel of Matthew say that Jesus was about 2 when Herod died? No, actually it doesn't say this. It says that Herod slaughtered the infants from 2 and under. This means that Jesus was definitely less than 2 at the time. Herod, the violent, vindictive man that he was perfectly willing to kill extra people to make sure he got this Messiah figure. If the wise men had told him, we think he was born about 2 years ago, Herod would have been killing people a lot older than 2. The fact that he set the limit at 2 strongly suggests Jesus was well under 2. Maybe he was a year old, maybe a few months. We don't know exactly. We also don't know how much time elapsed between Herod's slaughter of the innocent children in Bethlehem and Herod's death. Could have been a very short interval, could have been a little bit longer. So we're going to go ahead and leave this line where it is, suggesting this is the absolute latest possible date of Jesus' birth. That is, if Jesus was born right before Herod died, that's about as late as you can put it. Might have been earlier, but that's the latest possible date. Now, we've spent an awful lot of time talking about the Herodian chronology. When I started this video, it was not my intention to create the longest video on YouTube about the timing of the death of Herod. I may have accidentally succeeded in that feat. What have we accomplished? 2 things. Number 1, we got a latest possible date for Jesus' birth on our timeline. That's helpful, although we could have gotten pretty close to that using other arguments. Number 2 is the significant accomplishment. We have removed the principal obstacle to our research, an obstacle that has sunk thousands of attempts to calculate when Jesus was born. The belief that Jesus must have been born prior to March of 4 BC because that's when Herod died, the sure hypothesis. This has led numerous scholars to ignore the years after 4 BC. We've already seen in evidence that we have considered, and we will see in evidence we have yet to consider, there are actually some decent reasons to look at those years. But because scholars often presuppose the sure hypothesis, those years usually get ignored. By removing the obstacle of the sure hypothesis from our analysis, we can now look at a range of dates that is often ignored. And in the next video, we're going to dial that range in a lot further.